Thanks, everyone. For those of you that were in the previous session, as mentioned, we are talking a little bit about some of the same topics. The previous presenters talked about the type of people that you can get a hold of with qualitative interviews and with video content, and it's to represent the same type of people that you're trying to reach. And we're going to take a little bit of a different approach to this. We're going to be looking at how you can use the qualitative interviews to actually add insight into a quantitative project. So I work for eBay, as mentioned, and data is the lifeblood of eBay. So we have more data than we know what to do with at times. Decisions are made by very large amounts of data. A lot of decisions are made at eBay where you can take 10% of the population going through an auction, trying to change a color on something, figuring out how does that impact the conversion rate, how does that impact the click-through rate. So eBay is always making decisions based off of data, and a lot of times from research, it's being considered as a metric as well. So they want to understand what the ROI is of the research, what's the statistical significance of it, exactly. Basically, they want to make it more of like a financial metric than a human customer metric. And so it's really hard when you have a data-driven company to try to use customer insights and customer voice. So some of the facts at eBay: 162 million active customers globally. We have 800 million active listings on the site. Cell phones sold every 4 seconds on eBay. So as I mentioned, when you're at a data-driven company and you know that your audience is going to be looking mostly at quantitative data, you have to find a way to balance that. So in addition to quantitative information, I have to find a way to represent the voice of the customer for all these 162 million active buyers. I need to find a way to represent the voice of, did the experience go well? Did the experience not go well? When they're looking at a listing, does it have all the information they need? So you have to find a way to balance the quantitative desire at a data-driven company and also try to find a way to humanize the voice of those customers. As mentioned, I work in customer loyalty, and so most of you are familiar with NPS as a metric, but I'm just going to go over a little bit of it. The goal of NPS is to try to understand customers' likelihood to recommend your brand or your product. You're going to ask them the likelihood to recommend you. You're going to ask for people that give you a score of a 9 to a 10. Why do they like it? How do I do more of it? How do I continue doing it? For people that give you a score of a 0 to 6, they're considered detractors. You need to figure out these are your opportunities to improve. There are people that are going to not only leave your company and not spend more, but they're also going to tell other people about the bad experience that they've had. And so they really find ways to find opportunities to improve your company. Some examples of this is, my product has made my life easier. I really love the design. I love the exceptional customer service. And I think if you yourself thought about a company that you like right now, you'd probably be able to give some praises in regards to it, or a company that you didn't like. You probably have some kind of emotionally charged reaction to it. If you've had a bad experience, you're not going to say things like, it wasn't that great, or I really didn't like it. You're going to have some human emotion behind that, and you're going to really want to be able to share your story, share your experience with customers outside of the company. And sometimes when you look at quantitative research, it loses a little bit of that human voice. So what we did is we partnered together. We sent out a survey to our customers, asking them their likelihood to recommend eBay for people that took the survey, or whether it was on a mobile device or whether it was on a computer. We asked them an open-end topic, and an example of that is I love getting deals. For those of you that shop on eBay, which is hopefully everyone in the room, deals is one of the biggest drivers of promotion on the site. And so what we start out with is pretty simple. You send out a survey, you get some unstructured data about what's going well or what's not going well. And the goal of any researcher, right, is we need to listen to our customers. And so, as I mentioned, I represent the voice of 162 million active customers on eBay. Some of them are telling me that they love deals. Some of them are telling me that they're worried about their item arriving late. And some of them are telling me their item has never arrived, and I need to figure out how often these things are happening. So I take this unstructured data, again, I'm in a quantitative world with a data-driven company, and I have to put it into structured data, right? So people are talking about deals, people are talking about shipping, and people are talking about trust with eBay. And the next step is, how often is deals happening? Is deals a one-time occurrence, or is it happening a lot? So then you end up, from a research perspective, counting how many people are talking about deals, counting about how many people are talking about shipping, counting how many people are talking about trust as a topic. And in the NPS construct, you end up finding out that deals is one of my promoter reasons. Shipping can be one of my passive reasons, and detractors is one of my trust reasons. So again, you take a bunch of unstructured data, you add structure to it, you add sentiment, you add context, and so now, again, I'm falling down the quantitative path of how do I take a lot of the voice of the customer and make it as easily digestible for the company as possible. And this is the way it ends up. It kind of drew this pyramid. So it all starts with the voice of the customer from a research perspective. And then it turns into a little app like this. So again, it starts with the voice of the customer. We have a lot of customers. Then we start taking that and we start putting them into topics. So it makes it easier to digest. We start making unstructured data. We add sentiment. We add positive, negative sentiment. It ends up becoming, from an NPS perspective, a net score. And so it can be boiled down to one number: 32%, 48%, negative 5%. And then what ends up happening is people like that number and they want to see it again. How are we doing this quarter? How did we do last quarter? It ends up becoming a trend line. So it's up 5 points, it's down 5 points, and is that statistically significant? From there, it gets thrown into a presentation, and for NPS, since it's our key customer metric, it ends up going to the executive dashboard and scorecard. So a lot of times I get 1/4 of a page on a PowerPoint slide, and that's my real estate. And if you're just showing a number out there, 32%, 25%, it may be interesting, but it's really not bringing the voice of the customer to life, and that can get lost. And so that's one of the keys is we always start with the voice of the customer, but at the end, when you get to an executive dashboard or a scorecard, that customer sentiment can get left behind, and that's something that's really important. So bringing it back to this, I love getting deals, but for those of you who shop on eBay, we also have what's called a daily deal. So there's specific deals on the site. So if a customer's telling me, I love getting deals, are they talking about eBay daily deals? And if it's not eBay daily deals, what makes it a deal? Is it 10% off? Is it 15% off? It's really hard for us to say, like, I need more deals on eBay. Well, what does that mean? How do I make that actionable? How do I operationalize it? So even when we get an open end on the survey, sometimes it just doesn't give us the full picture. Turn this over to you.
So, I think there's a theme that's emerging at this conference, and that's a lot of quant and qual starting to live together. It's like the famous phrase that Bill Murray used in Ghostbusters when he was saying everything's going to go crazy, cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. And I think we're on the threshold of that. And I think it's a pretty logical step, though, because quant and qual, they both give really important parts of the story. Right? You need the numbers, you need the data. Without that, you don't really have the validation that you need. But there's a visceral quality that the quant gives you. I mean, how many people were in the session right before here with Zoe and Stefan? So when the videos played, I don't know if you guys noticed, there was a noticeable lift in the room. Even when the bad videos played, like people were laughing, they were connecting. There was something visceral going on there that sometimes charts just don't give you. But there's that sense of, well, I'm really starting to understand not just what the data is saying, but who's saying it and why they're saying it. And that's, as Sam was saying, that's a really important part of the data. So the way I like to present it sometimes is to get it to the whole story. So I use this example from the Dust Bowl. So if you look at the Dust Bowl, from a quant lens, it's just this mass of people moving from the middle of the country to the west of the country. And it's like, wow, that's an impressive number of people, but it doesn't give you the visceral sense of what's driving that. And then you start seeing some of the classic photography from the time, and like, oh my gosh, they're moving from the wasteland. And they're impoverished, and of course they're moving because they have no choice. And that's the kind of, I think, cohabitation, that the humanizing of data that I think is crucial. And I think as we get further through this presentation, how that actually can make an impact on people who need to make decisions, and based on the understanding of the customer, that's what they really take away. In fact, one of my favorite quotes on this is from Scott McDonald. He's the former SVP of Research and Insights at Condé Nast. I love this quote. He says, it's paradoxical. If you can't show them with numbers, they're usually not going to pay attention. But if you get a couple of consumers on video to illustrate what you're talking about in the numbers, that's actually what they remember. They connect to that and they can use that. So what we did when working with Sam and eBay was we designed, this is something we've been working on a lot at FocusVision, the marriage of quant and qual. In fact, FocusVision has been known as a predominantly qual video streaming company, and that's been changing for years. And it changed. The biggest change is when we actually bought a survey platform and brought that. So literally quant and qual are under one roof. And so we've been
putting these things together. So what we did is we had folks from eBay going through the survey. We had a hypothesis that you find your story in the data, step 2. And then there's a number of different ways you can bring that, humanize that data. You can have them do video testimonials, just the way that Zoe and Stefan described in the previous presentation, or you can actually pull them out into an actual video interview intercept. So live, moderated, using our interview platform. And then you take that information together, analyze it, report, and connect your audience to those insights. So you have that humanizing qualitative layer pushed over. And I talked about the video open ends, and we had very similar results as you guys in terms of what was usable. Our learnings with instructions were very similar in terms of if you're going to have people doing videos and surveys, you have to give them really specific instructions on what the conditions, the lighting conditions, the sound, turn off the air conditioning, the radio in the background. It's not natural to most people, and it makes a difference. And it was really nice. What's also really nice is that you can really dial in who gives you your videos, right? So if you only want answers to certain questions at certain extremes of the range, you can dial that in as well. Peeling back the onion on this, we'll give an example of one of the moderated, an answer from one of the moderated interviews from the study. We actually reenacted this because we didn't get permission.
I don't feel like the listing is quite as streamlined on eBay as it is on Amazon. I've ran into this problem a lot on eBay where I'll look for something and it seems like it's not set up to where it'll give me other things that are closely related, so that, if I don't like this one thing after all, at least I have all these other options. It seems like you have to put in a very, very particular kind of title, or if your search text doesn't exactly match what the seller put in, it's never going to come up. And I've ran into situations where I found something one time and then I didn't bookmark it or whatever, and then days later I couldn't find it, and I know it was still up. Time hadn't expired or whatever by then, but I just simply couldn't find it because I couldn't remember what the seller had titled it as. On Amazon, it's much more set up to where, like, if I look for something, it automatically knows, okay, you like this category. We're going to show you all these other things that you're probably going to be into. And it just makes finding things way easier and quicker than the pain I have with that on eBay.
So it gives you a flavor, right? And so there was a series of these interviews that they picked up right from the quant. So you find something in the quant, and then you're able to, dial and humanize that and figure out what's lurking beneath the surface. Okay, and I'm going to hand it back over to Sam to talk about the impact of all this.
Yeah, one disclosure, that was the only person that didn't like eBay.
That's right.
So it was really hard for us to find that guy.
We wanted to make sure that you felt like we were telling the truth, that we would be legit.
So I think that that shows a really good example, right? So at the end of the day, if you look at the early part of the presentation, I could have just said, hey, search is a problem. But that's not going to really provide any context. And the search team may go out there and be like, okay, we're going to go fix search, and we think we know what the problem with search is, so we're going to change A, B, and C. But if it's never understanding what the actual problem with search is, then you don't have that context. The other issue, and the other thing that we like to do, is sometimes you like to compare yourself to how the competition is, especially when you're in e-commerce and you're a big retailer, that there are things like retail standards, and if there was no other e-commerce sites, then they're not going to have anything to compare it to. But sometimes the way they feel about you as a company is predicated on how they can do it somewhere else. And so that's one of the other advantages here is if you're doing some qualitative interviews, you can ask customers questions not only about your own brand, but about a competitor's brand too, so they can kind of hear like, okay, well, who's doing it good, who's not doing it good, and let me add some more context. So at the end of the day, if you add qual to quant, it's way, way easier for it to resonate than just numbers and graphs. You see a number in a graph, and the first time you see it, it may be super interesting. The second time you see it, you may just be curious if it goes up and down. By the time the third quarter, the fourth quarter, the fifth quarter, if the number's not changing, you almost forget that there's a human behind that number. It's customer sentiment that's behind these numbers, and it's just not numbers on a graph. I don't think quant and qual is the answer to everything, and I think that's what you guys were saying as well. I don't think qual, these types of interviews replaces quant. I think you can find a way to bring a human voice to some of the issues that you know that exist. And one of the things for me is, sometimes you can get desensitized as I'm trying to code and put these into categories and buckets. You can get desensitized to actually what the topics are because you're working so fast to try to understand them. But by doing this, it helps you become less desensitized, and it actually brings that human voice back. A lot of times I also hear from engineers and other people, they just don't feel comfortable talking to the customers. They're really curious to what the customers are saying, but they don't necessarily want to be the one to have that one-on-one interaction. And so it helps you provide a way to get non-customer facing employees to hear what the customer is saying. It allows you to go deeper. I think we just showed an example of how search can be a high-level topic, but it can allow us to go deeper. You can also trigger it on a survey where, if I say one of these 3 things are why you love eBay, like deals, for anyone that chooses deals, they can be the ones that can get the open-ended comment. So if someone's saying that I have a bug as one of the reasons that they're upset, or their situation is not resolved, I can specifically ask for open ends on those specific topics rather than just doing a quant approach to it. So it allows you to go deeper into issues. It really helps bring to life a presentation, and I think as you mentioned earlier, as your presentation was, you can hear me talk, but eventually you can drown out my voice. You can start looking at your iPhone, or you can look at your laptop, but once you hear something else, it automatically draws your attention to it. And it provides you a fresh view for an existing topic. A lot of times in quant research, by the second quarter, I'm going to tell you probably whether it's 25% or 23%. I probably know what the top issue is. But this provides a fresh view for you to get over customers saying, like, I already know that's what the issue is. Yes, but let me add some human context to it. And sometimes you can also hear, like, that's not what customers believe. I don't think that's really what customers are going to say. And then when you hear it from the voice of the customer, it's pretty hard. It's easy to say, Sam, I think you're wrong. That's really not what customers mean. But when you hear a customer saying it, you can't really refute it. And then the other thing it can do is it allows you to provide other opportunities. We showed an example of how we can get competitive insights, and specifically a topic about search, but there's lots of other competitive insights. You can say, name a favorite brand that you have and why did they do it well. We can take these customer videos and I can put them on an intranet site on eBay so that it gets broadly shared, right? I do a presentation maybe once a month, once a quarter, but when you have it on some kind of an intranet site across your company, it has those videos have a way to get to life, and people start talking about the videos. And even if what the customer is saying is controversial, it's starting to bring a dialogue and a conversation. And so you can hear people saying, like, oh, did you see what the customer said? Or, oh yeah, I totally agree with that customer. Why are we doing something? And it can really become a rallying cry. And then the other thing you can do is it can help identify customers to come in and speak with your company. As we saw previously from the videos, sometimes the level of eloquence isn't that great, but some customers really understand your brand, whether they love it or whether they hate it. They're emotional, they're passionate, they care, they're invested, and they're willing to come in and speak with you. So there's a lot of value in bringing quant and qual together.
Great. So just to put a bow on everything, key learnings that we found through this collaboration. Short webcam interviews are an efficient way to dive deeper into the humanize the survey data. That's the deeper way to go. You can also do it just with the video open ends within the survey tool. And as our previous presenters noted, there's more and more of these tools coming out. Videos create a deeper connection to the data for the audience. They humanize it. They put a face to it. And that helps people connect and understand and empathize, I think, which is ultimately the most important thing. You can empathize with your customer, and you can imagine what to do for them to fix it. And as I mentioned, including the mobile-enabled feedback questions in your survey definitely can give you not just for the quantitative, but it can also help you audition if you want to go deeper in qual and you want to add a deeper layer, whether it's a short online qual study that's over a few days or a in-depth interview. So I think that
I'd actually add one more thing to it. It's sometimes when you add quant plus qual together, it's also cost saving from a company perspective. People are in the middle of a survey, you have their attention. If they're willing to add a video, it's that much better than trying to recruit them later, try to fly them out, or try to find some time. So in our approach, we did a moderated session because we wanted to get some deeper insights from a competitive perspective. But again, adding it, embedding it into just an open end, allowing people to do it from their cell phone, I think as we've all heard about millennials, there's lots of new apps out there. People are recording videos on Vine. My daughter got me hooked on something called Marco Polo, where we now send video messages to each other. I've always had that capability through an iPhone, but now that I have this social app, I end up doing it a lot more. And so I think you find yourself, breaking down some of the barriers that you normally would have to being able to record yourself. And I think one of the things that sometimes holds customers or people back is the digital rights of it. They feel like you may use this from a marketing perspective where, you may say something to give me feedback, but all of a sudden on eBay's website, there's my face without me getting it, and everyone that I know that has it on there. So you need to make sure that you're really, to the point earlier, is conscious of data privacy and making sure that you let the customers know what you're planning on doing with the video, whether it's shared internally, whether it's shared externally, and how their voice and face is going to be represented. Do you guys have any questions for us?
We've got time for questions.
So here.
From a practicality perspective, understanding like the clip you showed was a reenactment, how hard is it to kind of comb through the videos that you collect, let's say on a quant survey, and be able to pull out the ones that are sort of either presentation worthy or really say something valuable?
Yeah, I don't think it's hard. I think it's just a little time consuming.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I mean. Is,
Yeah.
is it, yeah.
Yeah, it really depends. I think one of the things that we as researchers may be grappling with is in a world where data is infinite, and our tended ethos is no data left behind. Like more data is always better. There's times where you have to say, okay, this is how many that we need to get. We don't need, we need 20. We don't need, 250. And so, and with the participation rates and which videos are going to be good, there's kind of a self-selection going on that pares that down. But there is some effort to it. I think one of the things as we've been developing our tools for is to make it easier to actually see the videos quicker and actually get to them and figure out which ones are your favorites, which ones are keepers, and which ones are the ones that just say yes, or is some weird trailing off into the distance type of thing. So, and in fact, in our tool, we have it so that you're looking down through your tables and charts, and all of a sudden these video faces start popping up right there. So you just click play right there, and they start playing. So you can do it very quickly. Question here.
So, and y'all may have touched on this maybe in a previous session, but what percentage of people would you say are self-selecting to volunteer to give a video?
Yes, that was the
sorry, I wasn't
the entire previous presentation.
Okay,
yes.
sorry.
So, why don't you guys speak to that? I mean, I can say for ours.
I was going to say, I think these guys said it was like 14%.
Yeah.
I had the other result.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were saying about 14%.
But I think
about 10 to 20% is what we want.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think it also depends too, and one of the other points of their presentation is it really depends on the question you're asking and the topic.
Right.
And in theirs, they were asking people about Fitbit or orange juice. So they may or may not be engaged with Fitbit or orange juice, but if you look at it from my perspective, you're going to find people that are really passionate about eBay, that they find those Beanie Baby collectibles and they really want to tell you how they found it, or they may have just had a really weird, bad experience. And so I think it really does depend on the nature of, are you doing this as a market research and you're trying to get feedback on something like a video or maybe an ad, or is it something like where you're a company where you have people that are both going to be passionate or dispassionate about you, which may be more likely to provide feedback.
Do you typically just want to ask one question of an individual rather than trying to figure out how to make sense of a series of questions where you get different responses and try to respond to them and analyzing data from one person and post it?
Yeah, I mean, I think within this, I think that it's something that has to be kept in mind, because you can't have a video open end for every open end that you have in your survey.
What?
Yes. So just in case anybody was going there, we'll have tons of videos. It's like, yeah, you pick your most important questions. You can, use it depending on the sophistication of the survey tool. You can spread them out according to the questions that you're most interested in. So you get 10 from here, 10 from there. But yeah, within where we're at right now is pick one question within a survey that you want somebody to give a video answer to, and I think think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, and with all the research at eBay, when someone comes to me and asks me to do research, that's the first thing I ask them is, if you could ask the customer one question, what would it be? What do you care about the most? I think in this example, we had a moderated interview, so it was a little bit different. You could ask a few more questions. So if you feel like you have 2 or 3 questions you ask, you should probably try to do the moderated approach rather than just a self-selection approach.
Yeah, with the moderated approach, you actually schedule the person, and you can say, hey, we're going to do a 5-minute interview, a 10-minute interview, a 15-minute, and then you have time to go through those questions.
Thanks, everyone.